The morning sun spilled through the kitchen window, painting the countertops in a warm, golden glow. I stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, the sizzle of batter against the pan a familiar comfort. My wife, Clara, sat at the table, her auburn hair catching the light as she scrolled through her phone. Her lips curved in a faint smile. Our daughter, Lily, was upstairs, probably still tangled in her blankets, dreaming of the ponies she'd begged us to get her for her 8th birthday. It was a Saturday, the kind of day that felt like it could stretch forever, full of promise and routine. But something in the air felt off, like a note played just slightly out of tune. Clara and I had been married for 12 years. We'd met in college, back when I was a lanky engineering major with more ambition than charm, and she was a literature student who could quote Keats with a fire in her eyes that made my knees weak. She was my opposite in every way, spontaneous where I was methodical, vibrant where I was steady. We balanced each other, or so I thought. Our life together wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A modest house in the suburbs, a mortgage we could just about manage, and Lily, who was the best parts of both of us. I worked long hours at the firm, designing bridges and overpasses, while Clara taught part-time at the community college and filled our home with books and laughter. But lately, Clara had been different, distant. She'd always been a night owl, staying up late to read or grade papers. But now she was glued to her phone, her fingers dancing across the screen with a secrecy that made my stomach twist. When I'd ask what she was smiling about, she'd wave me off with a vague, just a meme, or something from work. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. At night, when I reached for her, she'd murmur excuses. Headaches, exhaustion, early mornings. I told myself it was a phase, that marriage had its ebbs and flows. But the doubt was there, a splinter under my skin, impossible to ignore. That morning, as I slid a stack of pancakes onto her plate, I tried to bridge the gap. "You got any plans today?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Maybe we could take Lily to the park later. It's supposed to be nice out." Clara glanced up, her green eyes flickering with something I couldn't place. Guilt, maybe, or irritation. "I've got a thing at the college," she said, cutting into her pancake without looking at me. "A guest lecturer's coming in, and I promised I'd help set up. Might run late." "On a Saturday?" I raised an eyebrow, leaning against the counter. "That's new." She shrugged, her fork pausing midair. "It's a big deal for the department. You know how it is." I didn't, not really. Clara's work was a world of poetry readings and faculty meetings, a far cry from my blueprints and deadlines. But I nodded, swallowing the question that burned in my throat. "Why are you lying to me?" Because I was sure, in that moment, that she was. The way her shoulders tensed, the way her voice pitched just a little too high. It was a tell I'd learned to recognize over the years. Clara was a terrible liar, or at least she used to be. The day passed in a blur of domesticity. I took Lily to the park, pushing her on the swings while she chattered about school and her best friend, Emma. My mind kept drifting back to Clara, to the way she'd barely kissed me goodbye before rushing out the door, her tote bag slung over her shoulder like a shield. By the time we got home, the house felt too quiet, too empty. Clara texted around 6, saying she'd be late. "Dinner with the faculty," she wrote, followed by a heart emoji that felt like an afterthought. I fed Lily, read her a chapter of Harry Potter, and tucked her into bed, my thoughts a tangled mess. It was nearly 10 when I heard the front door creak open. I was in the living room, nursing a beer and pretending to watch a documentary about deep-sea creatures. Clara stepped in, her hair slightly mussed, her cheeks flushed. She smelled faintly of wine and something else. Cologne, maybe sharp and unfamiliar. My chest tightened. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "You're still up?" "Yeah." I set the beer down, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "How was the lecture?" "Fine." She kicked off her shoes, avoiding my gaze. "Long." "I'm beat." She moved toward the stairs, but I stood, blocking her path. "Clara," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "What's going on?" She froze, her hand on the banister. "What do you mean?" "You've been off. For weeks. Sneaking around with your phone, coming home late, making excuses. If something's wrong, just tell me. Her eyes flashed with something. Anger, fear. I couldn't tell. I'm not sneaking around, Tom. I'm just busy. You're being paranoid. Am I? I stepped closer, my voice low. Because it doesn't feel like it. Feels like you're hiding something. She laughed, a brittle sound that cut through me. You're unbelievable. I'm going to bed. She pushed past me, and I let her go, my hands curling into fists. The doubt that had been a splinter was now a blade, slicing through every memory, every moment of trust. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at her phone, which she'd left charging on the counter. I'd never been the kind of man to snoop, but the weight of her secrecy was too much. I picked it up, my thumb hovering over the screen. Her passcode was Lily's birthday. I knew that much. With a deep breath, I typed it in. The screen unlocked, revealing a string of notifications. Most were mundane. Emails, reminders, a text from her sister. But one name stood out, repeated over and over in her messages. Evan. I didn't know any Evan. My heart pounded as I opened the thread, scrolling back through weeks of conversations. At first, they were innocuous discussions about books, poetry, the college. But as I read on, the tone shifted. Flirtatious emojis, late-night messages, plans to meet for coffee, then drinks, then somewhere private. My stomach churned as I read a message from 2 nights ago. Asterisk can't stop thinking about you. Tomorrow. Asterisk. I set the phone down, my hands shaking. Evan. Who the hell was Evan? I opened her photos, dreading what I'd find. There were pictures of Lily, of our garden, of a sunset she'd sent me last week. And then, buried in a hidden album, a selfie. Clara, her hair tousled, her lips curved in a smile, and a man's arm around her shoulders. He was handsome in a rugged way, with dark hair and a jawline that looked like it belonged in a cologne ad. The background was a hotel room, the bed unmade behind them. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at that photo. The betrayal was a physical thing, a weight crushing my chest. Clara, my Clara, had been living a secret life, one I hadn't even suspected until it was staring me in the face. I thought of our wedding day, her in that white dress, promising forever. I thought of Lily, asleep upstairs, oblivious to the fracture in our world. And I thought of Evan, this stranger who'd taken what was mine. The next morning, I was numb. Clara acted as if nothing had happened, chatting with Lily over breakfast while I sipped my coffee in silence. I couldn't look at her without seeing that photo, without hearing the echo of her lies. But I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed to know more, needed to understand the depth of her deception. So I played the part of the oblivious husband, kissing her cheek before she left for errands, waving as she drove away. Then I got to work. I started with her laptop, which she'd left open on the dining table. Her email was a goldmine. Receipts for hotel stays, reservations at restaurants I'd never been to, even a confirmation for a weekend getaway next month. Each discovery was a punch to the gut, but I kept going, driven by a need to know everything. I found Evan's last name, Harrington, in an email signature. A quick search online revealed he was a visiting professor at the college, a poet with a string of publications and a reputation for charm. His faculty profile photo matched the man in Clara's selfie. Next, I checked her car's GPS history, something I'd never thought to do before. It showed frequent trips to an address in the city, a loft apartment that a reverse lookup tied to Evan Harrington. She'd been there last night, while I was reading to Lily. The realization made me dizzy, but it also sharpened my focus. This wasn't just a fling. It was a relationship, one she'd nurtured behind my back for months. By the time Clara came home, I'd built a dossier of her betrayal. I didn't say a word, didn't let on that I knew. Instead, I watched her, studying the woman I thought I'd known. She laughed with Lily, cooked dinner, even curled up next to me on the couch to watch a movie. But every touch, every smile, felt like a lie. I was a stranger in my own life, a man whose world had been stolen. That night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing. I wasn't just hurt. I was angry, a deep, primal rage that demanded action. Clara had betrayed me, betrayed our family, and she thought she could get away with it. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to let this go, wasn't going to fade quietly into the background. I didn't know what form my revenge would take, but I knew it would be cruel, calculated, and complete. She'd broken my heart, and I'd break her world. The days after discovering Clara's betrayal were a blur of rage and precision. I moved through our home like a ghost, playing the role of devoted husband and father while my mind churned with plans. Every smile I gave Clara, every mundane conversation about groceries or Lily's school, was a performance. Inside, I was a furnace, stoking a fire that would burn her world to ash. I didn't just want her to hurt. I wanted her to feel the same gut-wrenching betrayal I did, to know what it was like to have everything you trusted ripped away. But revenge, I knew, required patience. It required a plan. I started by digging deeper into Evan Harrington. Knowledge was power, and I needed every scrap I could get. His online presence was polished, a carefully curated image of a brooding poet with a knack for self-promotion. His faculty page listed his credentials: a PhD from Yale, a string of published poetry collections, and a schedule of readings across the country. His social media was a mix of literary musings and photos, him at a podium, him with a glass of wine, him with a group of adoring students. Clara wasn't in any of the pictures, but I recognized the restaurant in one of his posts, a chic bistro in the city where she'd claimed to have faculty dinners. The timestamp matched one of her late nights. I cross-referenced his posts with Clara's phone records, which I'd accessed by logging into our shared carrier account. The pattern was damning. Calls and texts to Evan's number late at night, often when she was supposedly working or out with friends. I found emails, too, buried in a folder labeled Work Miscellaneous on her laptop. They were careful, never overtly romantic, but the subtext was clear. Phrases like, "Looking forward to our next discussion," and "That place we talked about sounds perfect." Each one was a knife, but I kept reading, cataloging every detail. I wasn't just building a case. I was building a weapon. The next step was understanding Evan's life beyond Clara. A deeper search revealed he was married, too, to a woman named Rachel, a graphic designer who ran her own small studio. They had no children, but their social media painted a picture of a cozy, artistic life: weekend trips to art galleries, homemade dinners, a dog named Jasper. Rachel's posts were warm, oblivious, full of love for her husband. I wondered if she sensed something was wrong, the way I had with Clara. The thought of her ignorance fueled my anger, but it also gave me an idea. Rachel could be a key, a way to turn Evan's life upside down the way Clara had done to mine. I started tracking Clara's movements more closely. I installed a GPS app on her phone one night while she slept, hidden in a folder she'd never check. It confirmed what I already suspected: frequent visits to Evan's loft, lunches at out-of-the-way cafes, even a trip to a bed and breakfast an hour away, booked under her name but paid for with a card I didn't recognize. I printed out maps, saved screenshots, and kept an encrypted file on my laptop, locked with a password Clara would never guess. Every piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building, a wall that would trap her when the time came. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed to understand why. Why had Clara done this? Was it boredom, dissatisfaction, or something deeper? I replayed our marriage in my mind, searching for cracks. We'd had our struggles. Money was tight when Lily was born, and my long hours at the firm had strained things. But we'd always talked through it, or so I thought. I'd never cheated, never even considered it. Clara was my world, my anchor. The idea that I wasn't enough for her was a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I started testing her, subtle probes to see how far her lies went. Over dinner one night, I mentioned a colleague who'd been caught in an affair, watching her reaction. "That's awful," she said, her voice steady, but her fork paused just a fraction too long. How could someone do that to their spouse? I nodded, biting back the urge to confront her then and there. Another time, I casually asked about her guest lecturer, dropping Evan's name as if I'd heard it in passing. Her face paled, just for a moment, before she recovered with a laugh. "Oh, Evan? He's just a colleague. Bit of a pretentious type, honestly." The lie was so smooth it almost convinced me, but I knew better. The plan began to take shape in late October, as the leaves turned crimson and the air grew sharp. I wanted Clara to lose everything she valued. Not just Evan, but her reputation, her career, her sense of self. I wanted her to feel exposed, vulnerable, the way I did every time I looked at that photo of her in his arms. But I had to be careful. Lily was my priority. Whatever I did, it couldn't hurt her. That meant no public scenes. No messy confrontations that would end up in court or on the evening news. My revenge would be surgical, devastating, and invisible to the outside world. The first piece was Rachel. I created a burner email account and sent her an anonymous message, careful to keep it vague but alarming. "Your husband is too close with a colleague at the college. Look into his late-night meetings." I attached a single screenshot, a text from Clara to Evan about a private dinner at his loft. I didn't sign it, didn't give any hint of who I was. Let Rachel draw her own conclusions. If she confronted Evan, it would sow chaos in his life, maybe even end their marriage. And if Clara got caught in the fallout, so much the better. Next, I targeted Clara's career. She loved teaching, loved the respect she commanded in her small academic circle. Evan wasn't the only one with a reputation to lose. I started by digging into the college's policies on faculty conduct. Adultery wasn't explicitly mentioned, but conduct unbecoming was grounds for review, especially if it involved a colleague. I drafted an anonymous letter to the dean, detailing Clara's relationship with Evan, complete with dates, times, and locations pulled from my evidence. I didn't send it, not yet. I wanted to time it perfectly to maximize the damage. But the real centerpiece of my plan was personal, a betrayal to mirror hers. I remembered a conversation we'd had years ago, when Clara confessed her deepest fear, being seen as ordinary, unremarkable. She'd built her identity around her intellect, her passion for literature, her ability to captivate a room. I decided to strip that away, to make her feel small, exposed, and utterly alone. The idea came to me one night as I scrolled through her old blog, a space where she'd once poured out her thoughts on poetry and life. She hadn't posted in years, but the account was still active, linked to her professional profile. I hacked into it. Her password was predictable, a variation of Lily's middle name, and started crafting a post. It was a confession, written in her voice, admitting to a lack of originality in her teaching, to borrowing ideas from others without credit, to feeling like a fraud in her field. I wove in just enough truth, her struggles with imposter syndrome, her envy of more successful colleagues, to make it believable. I didn't publish it, not yet. I wanted to hold it like a loaded gun, ready to fire when the moment was right. As November loomed, I began to orchestrate the final pieces. I booked a weekend away for Lily and me, a trip to visit my parents upstate. I told Clara it was a chance for Lily to see her grandparents, but really, I wanted her alone in the house, free to meet Evan without suspecting I was watching. I installed a small camera in the living room, hidden in a bookshelf, synced to an app on my phone. If she brought him here to our home, I'd have undeniable proof. Not just for me, but for the world I was about to destroy. The weekend came and I drove Lily to my parents' place, 3 hours away. She chattered the whole way, oblivious to the storm brewing in my head. I checked the camera app obsessively, but Clara stayed out, her GPS showing her at Evan's loft late into the night. When she finally came home, alone, I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. I wanted her to cross that final line, to justify the full weight of what I was about to do. By Sunday night, I had everything in place. The letter to the dean was ready, the blog post was drafted, and Rachel's email had been sent. I'd even started laying the groundwork for a financial exit, quietly moving some of our savings into a separate account in case things got messy. I didn't want a divorce, not yet, but I wanted options. Clara had no idea what was coming. She greeted us when we got home, all smiles and hugs, as if she hadn't spent the weekend in another man's bed. I kissed her cheek, my lips cold, and told myself it was almost time. The final trigger came a week later. Clara announced she was going to a conference out of town, A lie so blatant it almost made me laugh. Her GPS showed her heading straight to Evan's loft, and the camera caught her packing a suitcase with clothes I'd never seen her wear for me. Silk, lace, things meant to be seen and discarded. That was it. The splinter of doubt was gone, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. She'd chosen him over us, over Lily, over everything we'd built. And now she'd pay. The morning Clara left for her so-called conference, I woke before dawn, the house silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Lily was still asleep, her door cracked open, a sliver of light from her nightlight spilling into the hall. I stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, staring out at the backyard where Clara's roses bloomed, their petals vivid against the gray November sky. Those roses had been her pride, a labor of love she tended with a care she no longer showed me. Today, they'd be part of her undoing, a symbol of the life she'd taken for granted. My plan was ready, every piece locked into place like the gears of a machine I'd spent weeks building. Now it was time to set it in motion. I drove Lily to school, her backpack bouncing as she skipped to the entrance, oblivious to the storm I was about to unleash. Back home, I sat at my desk, the encrypted file open on my laptop, a catalog of Clara's betrayal. Texts, emails, GPS logs, hotel receipts, that damning photo of her with Evan. Each piece was a weight, but I carried it with purpose. My anger had hardened into something sharper, a blade honed by weeks of planning. Clara thought she could live a double life, slipping between her lover's bed and our home without consequence. She was wrong. The first move was Rachel, Evan's wife. I'd sent her that anonymous email weeks ago, planting a seed of doubt, but now I needed to water it. Using the same burner account, I crafted a new message, more explicit this time. Your husband is having an affair with Clara Bennett, a professor at the college. They've been meeting at his loft, hotels, even a bed and breakfast in Willow Creek. Check his phone. Look at his calendar for November 15th. I attached a PDF, a curated selection of evidence. Screenshots of Clara's texts to Evan, a hotel receipt, and a GPS log showing Clara's car at his loft. I didn't include the photo, that was too personal, too raw, but I added a link to Evan's faculty profile, tying him to Clara's department. I hit send, my pulse steady. Rachel would either confront him or dig deeper, and either way, Evan's carefully curated life was about to crack. Next, I turned to Clara's career. The letter to the dean had been drafted for weeks, a masterpiece of restraint and devastation. It outlined her inappropriate relationship with a visiting professor, citing specific dates and locations, all backed by evidence I'd compiled. I didn't name Evan directly, let the college connect the dots, but I emphasized the breach of professional conduct, the risk to the department's reputation. I printed it on plain paper, no letterhead, no signature, and mailed it from a post office across town, where no one would recognize me. The college was small, its faculty tight-knit. A scandal like this would spread like wildfire, tarnishing Clara's name in the one place she felt untouchable. But the real blow, the one that would cut deepest, was the blog post. Clara's old blog was still linked to her professional profile, a digital relic of her early career. I logged in, my fingers steady as I opened the draft I'd written. The post was a confession, written in her voice, laced with just enough truth to be believable. I've spent years pretending to be something I'm not. My lectures are recycled, my ideas borrowed. I've coasted on charisma, hiding the fact that I'm a fraud. It went on, detailing her insecurities, her envy of colleagues, her fear of being exposed. I added a final line, a dagger to her pride. I don't deserve the respect I've been given. I scheduled the post to go live at midnight, when Clara would be with Evan, too distracted to notice until it was too late. Her colleagues, her students, her entire academic circle would see it, and the damage would be irreparable. With the digital pieces in place, I turned to the physical. Clara's roses were her sanctuary, a symbol of her control, her beauty. I went to the garage, grabbed a pair of shears, and walked to the backyard. One by one, I cut the stems, not at the base but halfway, leaving jagged wounds that would kill the plants slowly. I gathered the blooms, their petals soft and fragrant, and arranged them on our bed, a mockery of romance. On the pillow, I left a note, simple and unsigned. You thought you could have it all. She'd know it was from me, but there'd be no proof, no way to accuse me without admitting her own guilt. The final touch was the camera. I'd installed a second one in our bedroom, hidden in a clock on the nightstand, synced to my phone. If Clara brought Evan here when she returned, I'd have undeniable proof, a video to seal her fate. I didn't expect her to. She'd been careful to keep her affair away from our home, but I wanted to be ready. Every angle was covered, every possibility accounted for. By noon, I was done. The house was quiet, the air heavy with the weight of what I'd set in motion. I drove to the firm, burying myself in blueprints and calculations, but my phone was never far, the camera app a constant temptation. Clara's GPS showed her at Evan's loft, where she'd been since last night. I imagined her there, laughing, touching him, believing she was safe. The thought made my stomach churn, but it also fueled me. She had no idea what was coming. That evening, I picked up Lily from school and took her to my parents' house again, claiming a work emergency. I didn't want her home when Clara returned, didn't want her to see the fallout. My mother asked if everything was okay, her eyes searching mine, but I brushed it off with a smile. Just a tough week, I said, and she didn't press. Lily hugged me goodbye, her small arms tight around my neck, and I held her a moment longer than usual, grounding myself in the one thing Clara couldn't take from me. Back home, I waited. The blog post went live at midnight, and by morning, my burner email received notifications from Clara's blog analytics. Dozens of views, then hundreds, as her colleagues and students shared the link. Comments poured in, a mix of shock and pity. Is this real? Clara, are you okay? This can't be true. I didn't read them all. I didn't need to. The damage was done. Her reputation, her carefully crafted image, was unraveling. Rachel's response came faster than I expected. My burner email pinged with a reply. Who are you? How do you know this? I didn't answer, but I checked Evan's social media. His latest post, a cryptic quote about truth and consequences, was flooded with vague comments from friends, hinting at trouble. Rachel had confronted him, I was sure of it. His marriage was a house of cards, and I just pulled the first one. The dean's letter landed the next day. I'd included a follow-up email, anonymous, urging the college to investigate rumors of faculty misconduct. By noon, Clara's department chair had called an emergency meeting, according to a group chat I'd accessed through her phone. Clara was still with Evan, her GPS unmoving, but her phone was blowing up with texts from colleagues. What's going on? Did you write that post? The dean wants to talk. She didn't respond, but I knew she'd see them soon. The noose was tightening. Clara came home that evening, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She dropped her suitcase by the door, not noticing the camera in the living room. I was in the kitchen, pretending to read a report, my heart a steady drumbeat. Tom, she said, her voice trembling. We need to talk. I looked up, my expression neutral. About what? She hesitated, her hands twisting together. Something's happened. At work. There's a misunderstanding. I need you to believe me. I leaned back, folding my arms. A misunderstanding? Like what? Her eyes darted away, and I knew she was scrambling for a lie. It's complicated. Someone's spreading rumors, trying to hurt me. I don't know why. Rumors. I repeated, my voice flat. About you and who? She froze, her breath catching. What? I stood, stepping closer. I know, Clara. About Evan. About the loft, the hotels, the bed and breakfast. I know everything. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she'd deny it. But then she sank into a chair, tears spilling down her cheeks. Tom, I'm so sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen. It just did. I didn't move, didn't soften. You chose him. Over me, over Lily, over us. It wasn't like that, she sobbed. I love you. I love our family. I got lost. I let her words hang in the air, each one a hollow echo of the life we'd had. Then I walked upstairs, leaving her crying at the table. In our bedroom, The roses were still on the bed, their petals wilting, the note untouched. She followed me, gasping when she saw them. "Tom, what is this?" "Read it," I said, my voice cold. She picked up the note, her hands shaking. "You did this? Why?" "Because you broke everything," I said, stepping closer. "And now you're going to lose it all." She stared at me, horror dawning in her eyes. "What did you do?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the department chair. "Clara, we need you in tomorrow. This is serious." She looked at it, then at me, and I saw the moment she realized the depth of her ruin. Her career was crumbling, her affair was exposed, and her precious roses were dying. I'd taken her world and shattered it, piece by piece. I left her there, surrounded by the wreckage, and drove to my parents' house to be with Lily. Clara's tears, her apologies, meant nothing. She'd betrayed me, and I'd made her pay. The camera was still recording, a silent witness to her collapse. If she tried to fight back, I'd have more ammunition. But I didn't think she would. I'd broken her, just as she'd broken me.